You can't accuse Overgrowth of being derivative. There aren't many games out there that star brutal martial arts bunnies as their hero, much less any that capture the thrill of being in a martial arts flick. It's wild. On the other hand, you can't accuse it of being a consistent or polished game either. The main campaign is simple and it requires only around 5 hours to tell its tale of a rabbit named Turner who's trying to keep his fellow bunnies from being enslaved by cats and dogs in samurai-like armor. The simplicity unfortunately extends to the unvoiced cutscenes, which typically just feature Turner chatting about how he doesn't need help and hurling tough talk at the dogs and cats. That's a shame, as Overgrowth's story always seems as though it wants to be an allegory for racism. It just never quite gets there. It does have some entertaining spots filled with betrayal and twists, at least. The story takes place across a generous selection of biomes ranging from swamps and meadows to snowy mountain peaks, but it's hard not to be distracted by how old everything looks. But the combat is exciting, much as it was in Overgrowth's 2005 predecessor Lugaru, which is remade here with Overgrowth's engine as a super short secondary campaign. Overgrowth captures the thrill of being in a Jet Li martial arts flick in a way few other games do, partly because Turner's rabbit legs let him satisfyingly bound across long distances and land by smashing his feet into a wolf's face. Once you get the hang of the challenging combat, and you might find it takes a while, it's a generally entertaining dance of punches and kicks with ragdoll physics, hurling spears, and knocking down dogs to potentially steal their weapons. It even rewards stealth, as you can sneak around and slit the throats of enemies if you don't feel like fighting them head on. If you do end up fighting them, you can usually just burn through even the toughest fights with Turner's devastating flying face kick. That one move works almost every time. That might feel like cheesing Overgrowth, but considering there's really no rhyme or reason to the way combat works, breaking it doesn't seem so bad. It's just wildly inconsistent. Sometimes Turner will shrug off several slashes from an angry rat, while at other times a single hit will send his dead ragdoll body hurtling across the screen. The same is true of the bosses. Sometimes a single well-timed slash is enough to kill one. At least it goes both ways. Yet nowhere does the uncertainty about what works and what doesn't get more annoying than in Overgrowth's frequent platforming sections. It's not always clear where you're supposed to go, even with scratch marks pointing the way, and there's seemingly no guarantee that Turner will grab a handhold on a jump. There's also precious little consistency in the way Overgrowth interprets fall damage. Sometimes Turner can leap across huge chasms with no damage, and other times breaks his legs on a relatively small hop elsewhere. Fortunately, Overgrowth lessens the pain of these failures in both platforming and combat with frequent checkpoints and fast respawns. But those can't fix problems like bugs that trap you behind invisible walls and cutscenes that don't trigger because you didn't approach NPCs from the proper direction. The combat of Overgrowth is exhilarating when everything's working as it should, but that's not very often. You also have to get used to the wonky and weird way it interprets both combat, strikes, and landings. It's a shame that everything else about Overgrowth, whether it's the story, the level design, or even the physics system, feels undercooked. It's hard not to find some fun here, but it's fun you'll soon forget. For more on 3D fighting games, check out our reviews of Absolver and Tekken 7, and for everything else video games, keep it right here on IGN.